I'll start. At the bar, I walked up to a girl. Drunk me was trying his luck as usual. I used a cheeky pickup line, nothing too forward. Suddenly, the girl's friend came up to me and pushed me to the floor. Incredibly drunk and stunned, I threw up on myself in a state of shock and agony. I looked up to see the flashlights of phones and laughter all around. That was the lowest I had felt in a while after that. Story 1. I was in the military attending a week-long training in Germany. It was the time of disco, so everyone went out and danced. I was in a large disco, though I don't remember exactly where, and had drunk quite a bit. I was upstairs, and next to me was a beautiful girl dancing ecstatically. She wore a great outfit and had a lovely smile when I looked at her. So I started dancing with her. She kept smiling but seemed to look away occasionally. After a few minutes, I realized she was a hired dancer, and everyone downstairs on the large dance floor was watching her. And me. Story 2. I was playing pool with a former coworker at a local dive. For no reason, she jokingly punched me in the stomach hard. She was laughing, but several guys who saw it looked completely shocked. There was no way I was going to hit her back because that would have ended even worse for me. She apologized the next day, but I kept my distance after that. Story 3. Awkward moment that weeks later turned embarrassing. Extremely awkward. Out drinking when I met a girl. She and I flirted and eventually started to make out. She stopped, said she needed a drink and I needed a smoke. Outside, her friends approached and informed me that she was married to a United States Marine Corps service member and that I might not want to do this. As a United States Marine Corps service member myself, I thanked them and left. 3 weeks later, I was at my unit's mandatory family fun day when I ran into a fellow United States Marine Corps service member, one rank below me, and the same woman. She didn't recognize me, but I certainly recognized her. I avoided them as much as possible. Eventually, I worked up the nerve to tell him about his wife a few days later while at work. They are divorced. Story 4. On my 21st birthday, I got incredibly drunk. We all loaded into the van and were about to head home, but I decided I needed some Taco Bell. I pulled up to the window, thinking I knew the girl working and planned to talk to her. I climbed from the back of the van to the front to say hello, but I projectile vomited through the drive-through window. It also wasn't who I thought it was, and I am still banned from that Taco Bell. Story 5. I showed up to our first date only to realize I forgot my wallet and couldn't go back to get it because it was over an hour's drive. I called her and asked to reschedule, but she thought I was standing her up. Luckily, I was early and managed to go to an ATM to withdraw money without my card. At the time, Wells Fargo could send you a code to use at their ATMs before she arrived. I somehow turned things around, and it went well until we were dancing. I was kissing her neck and went up to her ear, where I accidentally sucked off her earring like a shop vacuum. I'm not sure which one of us was more confused when that happened. Anyway, we've been married almost 4 years now. Story 6. On a first date, we were enjoying dinner and everything was going great. Then a woman came to our table on the way out and asked me, "Are you Blake Shelton?" My date giggled and I said, "No, sorry." Then the lady said, "That's okay. He's not that good looking anyway." Then she walked off. My date and I both got real quiet, and the whole mood changed because I couldn't think of something witty to get us back on track. There was no second date. Story 7. A friend and I went out with 2 girls. After the club, we went to the parking garage where my car was parked. I thought it was cool to go full speed in reverse to impress the girls, of course. What I did not see was a concrete pillar. I hit that pillar with such force that my radio popped out. Story 8. My card was declined when I was paying for dinner. The bill was $150. It was not because I did not have money, though. It was because I paid a bunch of bills earlier that day. I hit my daily limit. The bank would not let me withdraw money from the automated teller machine or use credit. It was the first day, and it was her birthday. Story 9. Banger story though, at least you have that. Worst experience. I live in an Irish village, so we all know each other. Drunk me was chatting up a pretty decent girl. It was going well. She was giggling and touching my arm. Then she said something about speaking Spanish, and I said, "Oh, you went to Spain a lot." right? She looked at me weirdly and said, "How did you know that?" Then I realized I saw it on her social media years back when I was browsing her profile. The silence overwhelmed me. She said, "Ah, you were stalking me on the internet. That was awful." I wanted to curl into a ball and roll all the way home. Story 10. I was trying to hit on a girl at a party. I went to the bathroom and did not realize I had a split stream. One stream hit the toilet accurately. The other stream, unknown to me, was hitting my thigh. I went back out to resume flirting, and she covered her mouth to muffle laughter. Soon, the whole room was laughing at me because of a stain from my thigh to my knee. I decided to be more careful and aware when partying. I wanted to disappear at the time. Story 11. It was a first date. At the end of the night, she suggested I start my car and wait in hers while it warmed up. It was unseasonably cold. I started my car and promptly locked my keys inside. It took an hour for the locksmith to show up. I must have made a good impression. We have been married 21 years. Story 12. The worst part was I had a girl who was sure she was going to come up to the hotel where I was staying and have sex with me. She wanted to stay the night because we both didn't have our kids that day. I had a few meetings first before getting back and stopped at Target to get some snacks. I had some trail mix a few hours before meeting with her. I didn't think anything of it. We started making out in the car when I took her to the pizza place to get food because neither of us had eaten much. She said, "My lips are tingling. Did you have peanuts?" I didn't think about it, but I said yes. She said she was really allergic. She had a mild reaction but went home after eating pizza and broke up with me later that week. Story 13. There was a girl in high school I was really interested in who had already rejected me. Months later, I gave it another try and asked her out to a movie. To my surprise, she said yes. We got to the theater and ran into two of her friends who were seeing the same movie at the same time. Things felt awkward immediately as she started spending more time with them and said very little to me. During the movie, her friends sat between us. I drove her home but didn't say much. I didn't ask her out again, but for some reason I was determined to ask her to prom. She said yes again. It was awkward. As obvious as it might sound, it wasn't until many years later that I realized it wasn't a coincidence that her friends were there that night. She must have panicked when I asked her out, said yes because she felt bad saying no in the moment, and immediately told her friends to come as a way to neutralize the date. Story 14. Once, I woke up in a random bed with no idea how or when I got there. I was changed into pajamas. All of my money was still accounted for. A cup of water was left beside the bed. I lay there for a while and pondered my circumstances. I knew I got separated from my friends, but I couldn't remember exactly how, and I had a big black spot on my night. A young woman rounded the corner, and I say this in the most respectful but transparent way I can. I thought instantly, "Oh dear God, please tell me we didn't." We didn't. She found me wandering the streets and took me in. I slept on the couch while she gave me her bed. She got some food in my stomach and gave me water. She helped me get changed. She made sure I was okay in the morning, had my phone charged, and had a destination. She had talked to my friends and made arrangements, letting them know I was safe beforehand. She set me on my way, and I never saw or heard from her again. I'm pretty sure I had a guardian angel encounter. Story 15. I was dancing with a girl I met at a bar for over an hour, mostly grinding. My legs were already sore from a recent workout, but I carried on. I had one hand on her waist with my drink in the other. We were near a stage with a railing, so I used my drink hand to hold the railing and lessen the pressure on my legs. However, I lost grip of my drink, and it nearly tilted to about a 45-degree angle, spilling some of my drink on the girl. It was an instant turn-off for her, and my chances of taking her home dropped to 0. The next day, I had some of the worst delayed onset muscle soreness in my quadriceps and hobbled around the entire weekend while my roommates laughed. Story 16. Got erectile dysfunction. It was a little embarrassing, but not too bad. I didn't realize the impact until the text she sent me the next morning right after she left, even though she kissed me. The text said she would not meet me again and included comments about me not being a real man and how she could easily find someone else. The thing is, it was our second date and I thought things were going well. She was the one who kept giving me shots. I could have declined but didn't want to look like a wimp. I explained to her why I was having difficulties, and she seemed to understand. Oh well, at least she showed her true colors early on. Story 17. This was in the 1980s. I went to a dance club with my friends. I noticed an absolutely gorgeous girl, but she was there with a very strong-looking guy. I really wanted to ask her to dance, but didn't have the courage because I might get hurt. So I asked my friends if they dared me. They did, and I said, "What's it worth?" They offered most of their cash, about the equivalent of $100 today. It was a big dare. That gave me the confidence to ask her in front of her big boyfriend. She said yes. I danced with her. She was beautiful and sweet. I was thinking I'd like to get to know her better. I went back to the table where my friends were sitting. They all high-fived me and handed me their cash. The girl turned to smile at me. The smile quickly changed to a frown as she realized what had just happened. I ruined it. Story 18. I had a fake tooth from a hockey injury. I went on a hot date with one of the most gorgeous women I have ever met. The tooth broke off and I swallowed it. No further dates. Story 19. High school date with a public school girl. My group used to meet where the huge World War II gun emplacements across from Lake Merced used to be. There was a large pit where the gun was, with long dark corridors. We would build a fire in the pit and have parties. I parked my unreliable 1946 Ford, and my date and I hiked up to the tunnel. There was a nice fire going, so we started down toward the pit. It did not take long to realize that it was not my friends. It was a Hells Angels party. We casually turned around, and then we heard a woman scream, "Hey look! New people! Let's make them leave!" We started running while they followed, and I prayed that my Ford would start. It did. Story 20. I was on a blind date set up by a mutual friend. We were having dinner and talking about our lives when she asked my opinion on Andrew Tate. This was right about when he hit the news big time about 2.5 years ago. I had no idea who he was and said so. She sat quietly for a few seconds, took a sip of her drink, stood up, grabbed her coat, and left without a word. I was confused. The waiter arrived with our food and asked what happened. I told him that she asked about Andrew Tate and he had no idea either. I told him to pack up her meal so I could have it for lunch the next day and sat there and ate my dinner. I got home and called the friend who set us up. She told me that the date thought I was lying and must be an Andrew Tate fan hiding it because it would make me look bad. Her loss. We could have had a great time with her telling me who Tate was and having us making fun of him. Story 21. I was dating a girl who was renting a room from one of her friends who had an in-ground pool. We were walking out to the detached garage because she had just bought a new car and wanted to drive that night. It was winter, so the pool was covered. I cut the corner of the pool, missed the ledge, rolled into the pool, and got soaked. She was scared to laugh because we were still new, but I crawled my cold, dripping wet self out of the pool, and she had to give me a ride to my place to change clothes. I climbed out of the pool, freezing, and said, "Well, that wasn't embarrassing at all." She then felt it was okay to laugh, and we had a great time that night. We dated about 6 months and broke up on good terms for unrelated reasons. Story 22. This actually happened recently at work. I work in fast food, and I was working the drive-thru where I cash people out. A woman came through the drive-thru with a man in the passenger seat. I noticed she had tattoos on her chest, which is something I rarely see. She also had a large chest. Anyway, she paid, and as I was handing her card back, I zoned out looking at her chest. Partly because she had nice tattoos, but mostly because I wanted to see the tattoos. I forgot that I was staring. When I looked up, I closed the drive-thru window. Apparently, she noticed me looking because afterward she covered up a little. She did have a lot exposed. I thought this was embarrassing because I zoned out staring. Story 23. Took a girl home from the bar, made out, passed out, woke up and I had wet the bed and she was gone. Not sure if she was there when I wet myself. Never saw her again. Thank God. Story 24. Met up with a friend of my girlfriend's for a dinner date in an open relationship. My girlfriend had given me a condom just in case. despite me saying this was just an informal outing with no intention of anything beyond that. Toward the end of dinner, I pulled out my wallet to get my credit card. A few seconds later, the date said she had to go to the bathroom and got up. About 30 seconds after she left, I looked down and saw the condom on the floor. It had likely slipped out while I was getting my wallet. Eyes widened and cheeks flushed. I quickly picked it up and slipped it back into my pocket. It did not seem like anyone else noticed. The date returned a minute later, and the evening proceeded as normal. We went on a riverfront walk and stopped at a tea shop before deciding to call it a night. The next day, my girlfriend told me that the date had seen the condom fall out of my pocket. I was mortified and said, "Please tell me you told her the condom was your idea," which my girlfriend confirmed while trying not to laugh. The date had actually been highly amused by it and was impressed that I handled the situation smoothly and acted normal about it. Achievements in ignorance. Story 25. A friend of mine had the worst weekend ever with her boyfriend. They went on a trip to the city for an event, and he brought his ex along. I could go into detail about how horrible the weekend was, but suffice to say she was near suicidal when she got back. So I thought I would take her out for the evening to cheer her up. I did everything wrong. The car broke down. I forgot my wallet, so she had to pay. I messed up every way possible. I guess he did not look so bad by comparison, so they ended up getting back together and even had a couple of children. So Ed, if you were reading this, you are welcome. Story 26. I had a woman I absolutely adored in a very compromised position, cuffed behind her back, and I lost the cuff key. Story 27. Sorry about that, mate, but that is not something embarrassing, if you ask me. You were being yourself. I mean, yes, people were jerks by not helping and filming, but eventually you stood up and walked it out. Things like that happen, you know? So when you remember it next time from another perspective, actually it was fun in a sense, if I may say. My most embarrassing moment was getting tripped on the dance floor and falling flat on my back under the table of my ex-girlfriend with her new boyfriend, who actually helped me get up. Haha. Story 28. I was at Beyond Wonderland with a girl I liked and her friends. After drinking a bottle of tequila, I took a plastic pouch by myself and 2 ecstasy pills. I was out of control. My friend had to come get me and pull me away from her and the group because I was acting like a faded fool. I was uninvited from joining the big group at the Electric Daisy Carnival this year because of that. I am pretty sure she and her friends do not want to see me again, possibly dislike me, or think I am a loser. Story 29. I was around 16 or 17 years old, 23 now, and I got to hang out with a girl I had been talking to. I hyped myself up for her, but when the time came, I was done quickly. It was hands down the most embarrassing moment of my life, and I never saw or spoke to her again. Story 30. We hit it off, made out, and started going to her place in a small town within walking distance. We were both drunk. 5 minutes into the walk, she remembered she had come by bicycle and said, "Let's run back for it." Then started running. I thought, what the hell? And started running too. I tripped after a few steps, fell and broke my finger. That was the night of my 30th birthday. I guess I made an idiot of myself because I didn't even get to do the deed later. Story 31. I use a playful pickup line, nothing too forward, and suddenly the girl's friend comes up to me and pushes me to the floor. Can't have been that tame if you got pushed over it. Story 32. I was 14. A friend and I were out in Sydney for the night, our first time as teenagers out on the town. Walking across the harbor bridge, for teenage girls were coming our way. It was a bit breezy and cold up there. As we got closer, the girls started giggling and laughing louder and casting glances at us. They like us, I thought happily. Just as the laughing got loudest, I realized it was a little too breezy. I looked down and saw my fly was open all the way and my underwear was showing. They just kept walking, and we heard them disappear laughing behind us. Story 33. I almost fell on a pavement sticking out half an inch from the ground. Young people nowadays call it ick or something. Story 34. We had been dating for a while at the time. I ate something that didn't agree with me earlier, but I thought I had gotten over it. I had, except for some bad gas. We were walking through town, and I waited until some cars passed to release it. At one point, I just couldn't hold it, so I said I had to stop and tie my shoe and that I would catch up in a second. There were no cars. I knelt down and released it. I looked up, and she was laughing. Then she said, "Was that the final boss?" Story 35. I think I got kicked out of a club one night in college because I was trying to dance with a random girl. I'm pretty sure she said no, so I walked away and went back to my friend's place. Eventually, the bouncer told me my night was over and it was time to leave. Story 36. She was very attractive, and I became so nervous that I couldn't do anything. She let me stay over, so it wasn't too bad. I didn't have to walk home at 2 a.m., but it was still quite difficult. Story 37. I was freshly separated from my wife, very tight financially, and had no credit cards, operating on a cash-only basis. I was actively looking for dates and knew the game had to be played to some degree by springing for nice dates. I had purchased a preloaded prepaid card for a promising date, and a fancy dinner bill was returned after the card did not work there after a few attempts. I went next door to an ATM and returned, paid in cash, but not until 15 awkward minutes passed with me trying to explain the situation. She made a very weak-hearted offer to pay, but I refused. I tried to explain it to her, but the date was clearly no longer interested at that point. I was digging a hole and it was like $200 back then, and a peck on the cheek, good night, then ghosted. Story 38. Let's just say this. If she hadn't whispered wrong hole while laughing, I would still be apologizing. No, we didn't leave. We finished like champions. Story 39. I showed my girlfriend a picture of my stool after taking one, and she was disgusted. She still to this day swears she was not. Story 40. Roller skate date. Dislocated my shoulder. Hospital visit. It did not end up working out, and it was very embarrassing, but she was very nice and supportive about the whole accident. Story 41. Long story short, I excused myself outside from our first movie date for a smoke, but I really needed to release a lot of built-up gas. For milk stout pints throughout the day had caught up with me, and I was feeling very bloated. Well, I went to let out the first of what I thought would be many farts, but I had an explosive accident. I opened the door to apologize, saying I felt really bad all of a sudden and was going to head home. I barely got home and spent a good hour on the toilet just evacuating. We dated for 3 years after that and have now been married for 8. I told her about it after we were married, while sharing embarrassing moments with friends. Story 42. It was midsummer on the weekend. I worked out that morning prior to a blind date, took a shower, put on a black shirt thinking it might be more flattering for my size, and rushed off to the date with my hair still damp. We arrived at the restaurant and she asked to sit on the patio. Being polite, I offered her the shady seat. Then the clouds cleared, the sun came out, and it was hot enough that my shirt was somewhere between warm and uncomfortably hot. There was no breeze or fan, and I began to sweat. Not a glistening or damp sort of sweat either. This was like someone had connected a small hose to my head, and as the patio got hotter, the stream of water dripping off my head turned from a leak tap into a waterfall. Kept dripping on my glasses, and there is only so much a napkin can do. Stupidly, I had also ordered a spicy stir-fry. As the sweat got worse, my anxiety about it increased, creating a very effective feedback loop. By the end of lunch, I looked like I had just stepped off a cardio machine. Afterwards, we went to see a movie in a thankfully air-conditioned theater. But it turned out to be awful, Johnny English. She seemed nice, but understandably kept her distance. I didn't ask for a second date, and I doubt she would have been interested if I had. Story 43. I went to the beach and was hanging out with a group of girls, including one I had been flirting with for a few days. I sensed eyes on my midsection, looked down, and saw that there was a hole in my swim trunks, exposing my genitals. I was mortified. Story 44. When I was 16, I snuck this girl over and played my guitar out of tune for a minute. Then I asked her to make out, but she never contacted me again. Story 45. White night for the village bicycle, but what I get is a drunk grandmother urinating in the street and then trying to hook up with me. Story 46. Where to begin? Broke down at an ex's family gathering. Then I tried to sleep in the same bed with her. Not sexual, I was just tired and out of it. We were still together, but she was very upset with me at the time. Tried to commit a blood sacrifice using my own blood at a friend's place. I was drugged, made a girl cry. I don't remember exactly why, but it was likely due to my behavior. I still remember having to walk back with her and our group afterward. I was 15. Nearly crushed my friend with a speaker after a face full of snow, a belly full of vodka and beer, and apparently very uncharacteristic anger. The single most embarrassing thing, however, was going to the previously mentioned ex's place after we broke up. It was 7 a.m. I drank a full bottle of Jack Daniel's Apple, about 10 beers, and a full bottle of amaretto. I didn't have anywhere to sleep as my friend withdrew the offer of a place to stay. So, drunk, I wandered into town to her place. To her credit, she gave me a glass of water and only yelled at me a little. I still remember the look of disgust when I arrived. I don't drink much anymore. Story 47. I was really drunk after being out at the bar. I took a girl home. She threw up while I was having sex with her in the doggy-style position. I stopped and she yelled, "Keep having sex with me or I will kill you." I kept going. Story 48. I went on a date with a girl and ended up in the bedroom. She took off my pants, covered her mouth while laughing, then looked me in the eyes and said, You realize I prefer larger sizes, right? What even is this?" She kicked me out immediately. Story 49. Night out clubbing and flirting with a girl I met, dancing, drinking, and so on. Being a huge coward and inexperienced young man back then, I never made my move even though it was clear that she liked me. Long story short, after many drinks, I watched her kissing another man while some of my friends were laughing with me, and others feeling sorry for me. Now that I think about it, it's a funny story. But believe me, it took me many years to get over the cringe feeling about that specific night. Story 50. My girlfriend and I were kissing and pleasuring each other on our society terrace. We were about to climax when suddenly an old man appeared out of nowhere. We were frightened, but fortunately, he did not see anything. He came to us, took our chair, and left. However, in the next few months, he passed away after a cancer operation. Story 51. Chilling with a girl at my house during a party. Shots of Malibu are being drunk because that's what she liked. The bottle runs dry. I know. Tequila. Cue two people covered in vomit and a couch that now has to be cleaned by a very drunk me. Moral of the story: don't drink tequila after taking shots of sweet rum. Story 52. I was flirting with an attractive undergraduate at a fraternity party. We were getting along famously, and I was going home with her. Then I accidentally called her by her best friend's name, and she threw her drink at me. Her best friend, who was standing next to her, kissed me, and we spent the night together. Story 53. I have a story, and let me see if I can tell it so that it doesn't get too complicated. I just moved to a bigger city in Norway. It was one of those schools where you can live on the property. I got to know a few guys, and in the first week, we decided to go out and drink to celebrate the new school year. We found a club that had girls dancing on the bar and stripper poles. They even had water sprinklers that sprayed everyone from time to time out on the dance floor. When you are a young guy, that is a turn on. They also had cheap beer, so we went in. Within 10 minutes, there was a table with 3 girls. My 2 friends and I walked over, started talking with them, and ended up dancing and drinking beer together. I'm a redhead, and one of the girls was also a redhead. The second girl said, "I play volleyball. Feel my abs." I didn't get the hint. I felt her abs and thought, okay, great. Then, girl number 1 suggested we go to an after party at her house. We agreed, and around 3 in the morning we went there and started drinking. One of my friends disappeared upstairs with her to have sex. The red-headed girl was so drunk that she disappeared somewhere, and I fell asleep on the nearest couch. All of a sudden, I woke up and looked at the time. It was 8 in the morning. I could see straight into the kitchen, and a 12-year-old was standing there making breakfast. It started to dawn on me that this was her house, but she lived with her parents. I slowly sneaked out, I managed to take the bus back to school. A couple of hours later, I got a text saying she was very unhappy because she went upstairs wanting me to join her, but I was too tired to understand. Story 54. 1. Protein fart straight to the face mid-blowjob. I'm flirting with a Spoons bartender and it's going pretty good. I go to buy myself a drink and one for her after the shift and say, and how much extra do I have to pay to get your number? She giggles and says it's okay, I don't have to pay for that. I tap my card, about £7 for the 2 drinks, it declines. I never got her number. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.